Hello everybody and welcome back to the second part of my subdivision naming series. Today we're going to be continuing on where we left off, and we're going to be naming all the 386 first level subdivisions of North America. Obviously last time, if we haven't seen it, go check it out. We did South America. So if you were wondering about the ordering, I did South America, today I'm doing North America, and then we're going to go westwards from then on, meaning Oceania, Asia, Africa, and then we're eventually going to end off in Europe. So there were a couple of things that I forgot to mention in the last video, one of them being I forgot to mention the creator of this map, and in fact of all of these maps, Vicky, so shout out to Vicky for making all of this possible. And then the other thing was I forgot to mention the actual website I'm doing this quiz on. So the website's called Jetpunk. It's one of the most complete quiz websites on the internet. You can find practically anything you want in here. Alright, so enough with the intro. Let's go ahead and get into it. Let me just zoom in here. We're going to start off with the Lesser Antilles, make our way up the Greater Antilles, and then eventually mainland North America. Alright, we're going to zoom in right here. Start quiz. Alright, we're going to start off with the ABC Islands belonging to the Netherlands, of course, with Aruba and Curacao. And for some reason, I don't know why Bonaire isn't included in this one. Then we have these islands off the coast of Venezuela, belonging to them, of course, Dependencias Federales and Nueva Esparta. Now, some of you might be asking, why do I not include a space during the typing of these names? It's just to save time, you know. The quiz accepts your answer whether it be Nueva Esparta with or space or without a space, so yeah, it saves time. Nueva Esparta there, and moving on to Trinidad and Tobago. We have Superia, Point Fortin, San Fernando, Pinaldebe, however you pronounce that one, Princess Town, Mayara, Rio Claro, Sangre Grande, Cubeta, Boquita, Paro, very elaborate names indeed here. Chaguanas, Tuna Puna Piarco, Lima, San Juan Laventil. Now that'll take San Juan right here as well in the DR. Then we have the capital, Port of Spain, Diego Martin, and don't forget Tobago. Alright, moving on to Grenada now. Now bear in mind, there are going to be a lot of subdivisions with the same name in this part of the Caribbean. Alright, Grenada, we have Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. We have St. Patrick, there's also St. Patrick and Dominica, and St. Vincent the Grenadines. St. Mark also exists in Dominica. St. John also exists in Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, and Barbados. St. George exists in Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Antigua, and Barbados. St. Andrew. It took St. Anne there. I'm gonna try to type in St. Andrew. It took St. Anne in Jamaica and Stan Creek right here in Belize. What I meant to type in was St. Andrew, which also exists in St. Vincent, Barbados, and Dominica. Sorry, I just have to mention these. And St. David. Alright, also existing in Dominica, I think, and St. Vincent. Alright, moving on to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have St. David, St. George, St. Patrick, and St. Andrew already filled in. We're just missing Charlotte and the Grenadines. Alright, moving on to Barbados, we have St. John, St. George, and St. Andrew already filled in. There. St. Lucie, St. Peter, there's also St. Peter in Antigua. St. James, there's also St. James in Jamaica. St. Thomas, also in Jamaica. St. Joseph, there's also one in Dominica. St. Philip, there's also one in Antigua. Christchurch, and St. Michael, which is unique to Barbados. Sorry, that was a bit stressful there. Moving on to St. Lucia. Now these are going to have French names. Obviously, the Brits and the French fought over this island for many a times. So these are going to have French names. And yeah, we have Gros-Islet, Big Island, where the capital is at, Castries. We have Anse-la-Raille, Soufrière, Choiseul. We also have a Choiseul actually in Solomon Islands. We have Laborie, what is this? Vieux-Fort, Micou, and Denmark. And then we have the French-owned Martinique here. And then moving on to Dominica, we have we're missing Saint Luke and so JP, so Saint Paul there. So there was also a Saint Paul in Antigua there. And then moving on to the French-owned Guadeloupe, and then Montserrat, British-owned, and then St. Kitts and Nevis, simply St. Kitts and Nevis. And then Antigua and Barbuda, we have St. George, St. John, St. Peter, St. Philip, St. Paul already filled in. We're just missing St. Mary, which also exists in Jamaica. And don't forget Barbuda. Actually, Redonda is actually supposed to be here as well, but I guess it's not included because of the fact that it has 0 population. And then we have Saint-Barthélemy, belonging to the French, and then we have this island right here split into two, to the French and the Dutch. So we have Saint-Martin and Saint-Martin there, and obviously India. And then moving on to the Virgin Islands, we have US Virgin Islands and British Virgin Islands. Moving on to the Greater Antilles now, we have PR, Puerto Rico. Let me just get a better zoom here. Alright, moving on to DR, the Dominican Republic of San Juan, already filled in. Alright, so we have La Alta Gracia, La Romana, San Pedro de Macorís, El Ceibo, Atemayor, Samaná, Duarte, María Trinidad Sánchez, Monte Plata, Sánchez Ramírez, Monseñor Ruel, Santo Domingo. What did that take? It took Centre in Haiti there. I'm guessing that's like the Haitian Creole way of writing Centre. Of Santo Domingo, the subdivision and the capital there, Distrito Nacional, San Cristobal, Peravia, San Jose de Ocoa. It also took San Jose in Costa Rica, of Asua, similar to Asua in Ecuador. What is this? Barahona, Bauruco, Pedernales, the least populated subdivision, Independencia, Elias Piña, Dajabon, Montecristi, Valverde. We have Santiago and Santiago Rodriguez. We're going to type both at the same time here, Santiago and Santiago Rodriguez there. It also took Santiago de Cuba there in Cuba, La Vega, Hermanas Mirabal, Herbal Sisters, Espaillat, and Puerto Plata. Alright, moving on to Haiti. We have Centre already filled in. We have Nord, Nord-Est, Nord-Ouest, Artibonite, West. Now for some reason this is West. Yeah. It's also where the capital Port-au-Prince is at. We have Sud, Sud-Est, Nip, and Grand-Anse. We also have a Grand-Anse in Seychelles, of course. Moving on to Bahamas. Oh yeah, Don't forget Turks and Caicos Islands here, belonging to the British. Then we move on to Bahamas. Inagua, Maya, Guana, Ragged Island, which is actually one of the least populated subdivisions in the entire world, with around like 30-40 population. Still more than Hatoho Bay in Palau, which is the least populated subdivision on the planet. We have Acklands, Crooked Island, Long Island, 1K, and San Salvador used to be one. Obviously that will take San Salvador in El Salvador as well. Exima, Black Point, Cat Island, yes, Cat Island. Then we have Andros, we have South Andros, Central Andros, and North Andros, and don't forget Mangrove Cay. We have Bimini, the westernmost subdivision, and we have the island of New Providence, where the capital Nassau is at. We have Eleuthera, South Eleuthera, Central Eleuthera, North Eleuthera. We have Harbor Town, Spanish Wells. We have Berry Islands, Moores Island, and in the back row we have South Abaco, Central Abaco, and North Abaco. We have Hope Town, Green Turtle Cay, Grand Bahama, West Grand Bahama, and East Grand Bahama, the city of Freeport, and Grand Cay, the northernmost subdivision. Alright, moving on to Cuba. Santiago de Cuba already filled in. Guantanamo Bay. We have Grandma. Yes, we have a grandma in Cuba. Granma there. Granma. Aladdin. Las Tunas. Camagüey. Selva de Ávila. Santi Spiritus. Villa Clara. Cienfuegos, which means like 100 fires, but isn't fire like an uncountable noun or something? We have Matanzas, Mayabeque, La Habana, the capital, Havana, Artemisa, Pinar del Rio, and this island, Isla de la Juventud, island of the youth. Then we'll do Jamaica. For Jamaica, we have St. James, St. Thomas, St. Andrew, St. Catherine, St. Mary, and St. Anne already filled in. So we're lacking Westmoreland, Hanover, Trelawney, Manchester, Clarendon, St. Elizabeth, St. Catherine, the capital, Kingston, not Freeport, Kingston, and Portland. And then we have Cayman Islands, belonging to the British, and these islands, San Andres, Providencia, and Santa Catalina, belonging to Colombia. Alright, moving on to mainland North America now. I'll try to fit in one frame from Panama up until Guatemala. There. Alright, so Panama. To Panama we go. We have Panama Oeste already filled in when we typed in west. So we have Darien Gap. We have Darien, famous for the Darien Gap, obviously. The Pan American Highway failed because of this stretch of land right here, obviously. Other than being very, very tropical, having dense forests also is the home to many gangs, which is why it's a very dangerous territory there, especially for migrants searching for a better life. Alright, so we have Panama, Colon, there's also a Colon right here in Honduras, Cople, Veraguas, which is the only subdivision which has a coast on both the Caribbean and the Pacific. We have Herrera and Los Santos, just like the place in GTA SA. And then we have Chiriquí, Bocas del Toro, and then we have 4 indigenous territories in the comarcas indígenas of Emberaunan, Hunalala, with its very elongated shape there, Ngabe Bucle, and also Tierra de Comarca, however you pronounce that one. Alright, moving on to Costa Rica, which only has 7 subdivisions, so thank you, Costa Rica, for making my job way easier. We have San Jose already filled in, obviously also where the capital is at, San Jose. Punta Arenas, Guanacaste, Alajuela, Heredia, Cartago, and Limon. Alright, moving on to Nicaragua, we have here San Juan. Rivas obviously has Lake Nicaragua, which is like the largest freshwater lake in Central America, I believe. And then we have Región Autónoma de la Costa Caribe Sur and Caribe Sur and Caribe Norte, forgot to type there, and Caribe Norte, North Caribbean and South Caribbean Autonomous Region. And then Chontales, Boaco, Matagalpa, Jinotega, Granada, Masaya, Carazo, right? Carazo. I often get Carazo in Nicaragua and Corozal mixed up in Belize up there. Thankfully I didn't just now. And then we have Managua, where the capital is at, León, Chinandega, which looks like a seal right there, Chinandega, Estelí, Madrid, and Nueva Segovia. Alright, moving on to, didn't need to do that. Moving on to Honduras. We have Colón already filled in, Gracias a Dios, Rancho El Paraíso, Francisco Morazán, Choluteca, Valle, the only 2 subdivisions which have a coast on the Pacific. We have these islands on the coast, Islas de la Bahía, Bay Islands, Atlántida, Hierro con Agua, La Paz. There's also La Paz in El Salvador there. Intibucá, obviously, Lempira, Ocotepeque, Copan, Santa Bárbara, Cortés. Alright, moving on to El Salvador, San Salvador and La Paz already filled in. We have La Unión, Morazán, it's like Francisco Morazán as well here in Honduras, San Miguel, Usulután, San Vicente, Cabañas. Is it? Oh yeah, Cabañas. I thought it was Cabanas. I forgot for a sec. And then Cuscatlán, Chalatenango. What is this one? We'll do La Libertad first. Oh yeah, Santa Ana, obviously Santa Ana, and Aguachapan. Alright, moving on to Belize. To Guatemala. We have Izabal, Zacapa, Chiquimula, Jalapa, El Progreso, Jutiapa, Santa Rosa, Esquintla, Suchitepeques, Retaluleu, San Marcos, Quetzaltenango, just like the dinosaur name, Quetzaltenango there, Sonora, Totonicapan, Ejetenango, Tiche, Baja California in Mexico, Metetapan, Baja Verapaz, and Alta Verapaz, Petén, and Guatemala, where the capital is at, Zacatepeques, and Chimaltenango. Alright, moving on to Belize. Now, the only English-speaking country of Central America. Have Stan Creek already filled in when you typed in St. Andrew last time. Toledo, Cayo, Belize, where the capital is at, Orange Walk, and Corozal. Alright, moving on to Mexico. We're nearing the end of this, guys. So we have Baja California already filled in. Alright, so we have Quintana Roo, Yucatan, Campeche, Tabasco, Chiapas, Veracruz. It's very long shaped. Oaxaca, Guerrero, Puebla, Tlaxcala, Morelos. Then we have Estado de Mexico and Ciudad de Mexico, right here, Mexico City and the state of Mexico. Michoacán, Colima, Jalisco, where Guadalajara is at. Nayarit, Sinaloa, Sonora, Baja California Sur, Hidalgo, obviously, Hidalgo, of course, Querétaro. Ronaldinho actually used to play for the Querétaro football team. And then we have Guanajuato, Aguascalientes, and Zacatecas, which looks literally like a bipedal chameleon. Honestly, one of the most absurd subdivision shapes I've seen. Then we have San Luis Potosí, Tamaulipas, Nuevo León, where Monterrey is at, Coahuila, Durango, and finally Chihuahua. Alright, moving on to the US. Now, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South. And just copy paste this. South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Iowa, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, North Dakota, and South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, obviously the capital, Washington DC there, District of Columbia, already filled in. When we typed in Washington State, and we have Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, the only US state which only borders one other state. Alright, and then we have Bermuda right here, belongs to the Brits. And then, we forgot Alaska. Sorry about that. Almost forgot. And then moving on to Canada, we have Northwest Territories already filled in there. We have British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Yukon, Nunavut, the biggest province, Canadian. It's not even a province. Yeah, the biggest Canadian subdivision. Basically, Quebec, Newfoundland, and Labrador. Prince Edward Island, PEI, New Brunswick. Obviously, Quebec being the only monolingually French-Canadian province, if I'm not mistaken. New Brunswick might be one, I don't know. No, it's only Quebec, I think, yeah. And then we have Nova Scotia. And yeah, that's it. And don't forget the French-owned Saint-Pierre et Miquelon there. And don't forget Greenland, which is part of Denmark, obviously. Alright, so that's it for the North American continent. Stay tuned for the Oceania one. I apologize if there were any misinformation that I said throughout the whole making of this video. But yeah, see you in the Oceania video.